Ooh, we y'all, I've really, 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 really been looking forward to this one here. And y'all all know me and my boyfriend have an open relationship, and we're new into the kinkery and stuff like that. We're little baby virgins, and at least in that aspect, all over again. But today, I have with me on the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast a master.
I'm blushing.
I mean, a master. His name is Master Joshua. And Karma, is it proper to call you his slave, submissive,
Sex slave.
sex slave? And they have written a book called Surviving Master Joshua. It's a memoir of an unfaithful wife. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. How are the two of you beautiful souls doing today?
Doing really well. Really excited to be on this morning to talk about it. Being able to have Karma's story out there accessible is really exciting and important to me because she's worked really hard at it. She's dealt with me for 4 years to turn it out.
Yeah, it's a culmination of a big personal transformation, and for me, it's a big personal victory to be able to talk about it. Because, like the title says, it's a BDSM memoir of an unfaithful wife. So that's where we start off from, and it ends with us being able to talk openly, and I still have my family. So
You do, but it was a process, and it's so interesting to see like how how you evolve in the story from somebody who's like kind of timid about it all to by the end of the book. And really the end of the book, you're like, like it's like this cutting going on and stuff like that that we're going to talk about, later. And it was fascinating to me that part three of this book is basically like one chapter. It's like PO Box. I think it was like 1125 or something along
uh,
those lines. And so that lets me know how important that one section is. That you separated it like that. You know. So okay, I want to get into y'all's very, very, very titillating like history. Now, Master Joshua, I believe you've been doing this for at least like 20 years. I believe.
No, I've been doing it professionally for about a decade. I actually have to sit down and do my timelines again because I've been saying a decade for a minute now. But I've been on my own personal journey. There's levels to it because I can remember a story I was told about when I was 5 and I would rub my aunt's nylons, and it would excite me as a 5-year-old, stimulating my body. Was it sexual in nature? No, it was all sensation and stimulation, right? I lost my virginity at 12. That's another major turning point in my life. I had my first child at 18, 19, having to deal with family court at 19. These are all different layers of my own identity and journey that all matter up until the point where I'm at today, for all of us. But my purpose was discovered about 10 years ago when I started doing this professionally. And by purpose, I mean people come to me for self actualization and safety and submission, being able to have someone hold space for them where they can be authentically themselves, one piece at a time, because you don't just jump out of the closet, right? It's like being deviant, as some people call us, being perverted, as some people call us, kinky, fetishes. It's not easy because we're not the norm, right? Now, the coolest part about it is that everybody wants something. It's just shame and fear and safety, right? People don't feel safe enough to be vulnerable to be able to open those doors. My role is to be that safety for people to open the doors, either in events that I produce, one on one sessions, or intensives that we host. That's how I found power over sex addiction. And it was incredibly life changing to be able to say no, right? Just that simple word, no. And it really put the power back in my hand around who do I connect with and who do I not.
You say you've got the victory over sex addiction. At what point did you feel like you were a sex addict and why?
Oh, I mean, I have 4 kids. I have 4 different moms. I, uh, I would go out of my way in severe ways, detrimental ways to have sex, right? It I I was mandated to attend a program once. And while I was there, I was one of those guys sitting in the back, like, why the fuck am I here? I'm not one of these guys. And, you know, for substance, I wasn't, right? It was an eye-opening experience though, because as I heard people's telling of the stories of their relationship with substances, that was my relationship with sex. The things that they were ruining about their lives, the relationships that they were tanking, financially, what they were doing, how irresponsible they were being. That was my relationship with sex. And that's how I know sex addiction is a thing. To get over it, it took a long time. I had a really intense relationship with sex. And I'm glad to be able to look back at it and say, this is what happened and this was the turning point for me.
I was thinking about that earlier today about how addictions, how we get carried away with desire. So be it drugs or the pursuit of money. People get addicted to their careers. People get addicted to their children. People get addicted to all sorts of things. And but it's some sort of pleasure that we tend to not be able to get enough of. What I think that's beautiful about what you're saying, and a part of the reason why I, take issue with a lot of like more antediluvian addiction theories, like say the anonymous program says if you've been an addict, you can never stop being one and you can't ever do a drug again. So somebody who's like an identified sex addict, it's not gonna stop ever having sex. You're gonna find a way to get that shit together because it's unrealistic to think just because you were once a sex addict, you're never gonna have sex again. And I feel that so I appreciate the fact that you've done that and I commend you for that. But I feel like it's the same way with people who were once addicts and drug addicts. I don't feel like you always have to be one. I feel like you could learn, girl, how to not do your crystal meth or cocaine every damn day, but just to do it every now and then and still be fine.
Listen, no, listen, this is my theory around that, right? If people were to handle their problems, they would be good, right? But that's the hard part. The addiction is the easy way out of the problems. The hard work is looking at the problems. And it's okay that you resort to substance. It's okay that you fail sometimes. Just keep trying. Just get up and do the next right thing. It's it's not easy, right? It sounds easy, but it's not. It's a simple solution. But it's by no stretch of the imagination easy because it all starts with integrity, right? And what I tried to do with this relationship, and we'll get into it, is I tried to circumvent morals with ethics, right? And you can't circumvent morals, right? Ethics are man-made rules around human relations and what it is to do good. Morals are like universal law, right? And the basis of this book is built off of our developed relationship connection into a deep relationship where I had the perspective of I only need her permission. I only need her consent, right? Ethically. Morally, that's not the truth. The truth is I needed to know all the ducks were in a row before opening that door. But I got selfish in it too because she provided me a safe space. And we'll get into that because it's we're human beings, right? And we make choices that aren't always the right thing.
Well,
Sometimes they're the right thing for us, but they're not the right thing.
well, we can talk about it now. It sounds like what you're referring to is that part of the book that I was reading where like karma, like maybe your husband gave you certain permissions. Maybe you had, I think it read like you had loopholes and you used them, quite severely. Is that what you're referencing right now? Having the liberty and taking it a bit too far?
Well, I'm glad the book leaves that space where it's not quite clear where the fault is. But as in the way I see it, the loopholes were big, as in really ill defined, and it's a fig leaf, really. That my husband and I negotiated certain terms and it wasn't really a negotiation. We agreed on certain terms in which I could explore the topic of BDSM because I was interested in it, but he wasn't, right? We should tell the people we should give them a little bit of background, right? I went in as a reporter. reporting on a story about a religion in Kink. Joshua and his partner, Master Joshua and his partner, were the people who let me in. I was writing about an event that took place in their venue. Once I went to that event and spoke to the people and witnessed what happened, it became clear to me that my interest goes beyond the professional in BDSM. And shortly after, it became clear to me that my interest in Joshua goes beyond the professional as well. But we were kind of entangled. It wasn't, the boundaries were very blurry. Is it personal? Is it professional? Is it about being a journalist? Is it about my interest in BDSM? Is it about my interest in him? It was all kind of like mixed in. And of course, I'm married in a traditional marriage plus kids, and I don't want to risk that. So I am trying on the other front, on my husband's front, to be in a space where I'm not actually cheating. And it's kind of like, okay, I am doing so I keep reaching agreements with him, and the agreements keep falling short of reality, because in reality, I'm already in love with him. I fell in love with him very early on. So what was happening was that it just wasn't an honest. It's very hard to be honest when you don't know what's happening and when you're in a vortex, right? But that vortex created a situation where I really wanted something, and that something was not allowed within the framework of a traditional marriage. And I kept tweaking the framework, but not being honest about my intentions or about what I really want. Because at the time, I didn't know. I just, I was exploring, discovering. And I got that permission to explore and discover, but within, you know, nothing more than a kiss, and less than a kiss with another man. And that kind of was hard to keep.
Right.
Um,
So so
Can
you'll
can I throw in my half of that of the equation, right? No, because it's like it's it's tough. I was going through when she met me. I was going through a breakup. It was at a dissolution of a dynamic, right? They're not really the same. Dynamics are power exchange relationships where this case was a baby girl and a daddy dom. This is master slave. There's dom sub. There's all types of power exchange relationships where the focal point is the energy, the power exchange differential. So I was going through a breakup, and this was around the Me Too movement when it first started. Now, the Me Too movement was very necessary, and the bad actors, everyone got called out. And over time, it went from bad actors to bad people to bad relationships. And it got weaponized at a point. I was subjected to a weaponized Me Too dissolution. And she came into the class that we were teaching, the roundtable discussion around BDSM and religion, which, believe it or not, is they're two peas of the same, two peas in a pod. So dealing with that while still hosting events, while still trying to provide service to the community, because when you're accused of something like that, no one wants to hear it from you, right? Everyone, and I understand the believe the victim approach. I too, when as an event producer, I have to hold space for the victim, right? And I believe what you're saying. What I am also responsible, especially in this lifestyle, which is heavily defined by integrity, is I have to ask the other party what happened. I have to, because I need to hear the whole story to find out what's going on, because it's our responsibility if we're going to keep the community safe from all types of situations, right? We can't just pick and choose. Leadership requires doing the hard work. So I had no platform, still doing what I do because this is what I do. I found purpose in my journey through BDSM and holding space for folks to find safety and self expression and to to dive into their sexuality is important for me because there's liberty in that. I was shut down, and Karma was interested and curious about the lifestyle. So I gave her space and I gave her all my information, everything I could provide her information with, I would. And then she caught wind of the accusations. You want to take it from there?
Well, you read the book, so you know. But what happened was I started exploring this world through Master Joshua, right? Attending a little bit more events, being a little bit more involved on a personal level, getting a taste, which really kind of threw me off personally. It was such a shocking discovery. It really impacted me to I read about it in fiction books, so I kind of assumed that this whole lifestyle was fiction because I never saw it in real life until I met him, and then the whole discovery of it was kinda like it was just walking headlong into a train for me. And then so I'm trusting him as a guide during this period, which is very brief, just a matter of days or weeks. And very soon I come across one of the people I interviewed about the kink and religion story told me, well, it's a more interesting story to examine the impact of Me Too on the kink scene. Take the accusation against Master Joshua, for example. I'm like, whoa, hang on. What accusations against Master Joshua? And so he sent me the link to the accusations, which were on FetLife, which is kind of like the Facebook for kinksters. And
Mhm.
I began following up on them. And my first step was to confront Joshua about them and then interview him and his then partner about them. And you read the book. So, as I went along, I let go of that story. First, because he and his partner were not interested in the Me Too story coming out at that time because of they've already been through a lot with it. They were tired, his partner specifically. But I let go of it because I couldn't find enough concrete evidence that would meet my that part is not in the book. So I'm telling you there are certain standards for my publication to run with a story that involves a Me Too story. You need a certain amount of sources. They need to be verifiable to a certain extent, and their needs to be about some concrete things. Now, there's a lot of noise about a Me Too movement in the kink scene, but once you look at the complaints, the noise, the story changes because it's sort of like the story becomes not, oh, there are bad people out there using kink as a way to abuse people's consent. But the story becomes there's a lot of confusion there about what consent means and how do you verify it and when is somebody doing something wrong and when are they not? Because there were no clear parameters. So everybody who yelled abuser just, okay, that person became an abuser and that's it. And there was no recourse for them. That became my story in the end, the story I wanted to write as a journalist. But I could not run with it as a journalist because I would be standing on the wrong side of history as a liberal and as a woman and as like nobody would publish it. And if they did publish it, I would get into a lot of backlash. So I ended up publishing that it's not even a story because I ended up publishing that outlook in my book because it's not just my story, right? It's a part of history. It's a part of a movement in history. And it's a part of history that impacted people I love very much. So I really wanted to do something with it as a journalist and I couldn't. So I did something with it as an author.
You can't speak one way, you gotta find another way. I appreciate your thoroughness and I agree. Nothing in this life, is really ever 100%, and as somebody who has stood in front of a judge several times, I got like 4 felonies, you know, I I appreciate thorough research rather than jumping like to conclusions and things like that. So there's like literally no way every man who's ever been accused of abuse has done it. It's not possible. There has to be somebody lying somewhere, or and taking advantage of that movement. So You know,
One of the great things about our relationship is the accountability that she holds me to, right? And I've grown a lot and I've reflected a lot around my life. And I've even come to admit the points of where I was a horrible partner within those relationships. Not to the degrees that they made the accusations, but enough to know that I had a role in the love going from love to hate, right? So and that's what these relationships bring out is she's held my feet to the fire because I have a role that I play. And it's like if I'm falling short, she's gonna make sure that I'm aware of
I'm gonna quote him on
it.
that when it comes my time to make sure that you're aware of it. It's not easy. Thank
love it. It's beautiful. So I wanted to read a snippet from the book, if
you.
I may, because it's very, very fun. I actually have a lot of quotes that I pulled from there that I thought were just like so fun. So y'all, Carmen had mentioned earlier, like she was a reporter and everything like that. Well, she had reached out to a friend with wanting to do this BDSM religion story, like what she said, and the response that Karma got from her friend included this here. She said, and I quote, "She quickly lay out a feast for me, heavy on the red meat. Sikhs in diapers, clergymen in kennels." Yeah, I'm thinking like dog kennels. Hasids getting fucked up the ass with bottles of kosher wine. End quote. I thought that, I'm thinking, why can't the Catholic Church just admit that they do the same shit and be done with it?
No, I have a client who's been a priest for like 40 years, right? And it's like legit. It's everywhere. Everybody's got something. Everybody's got something.
And then another part, how Karma was saying she was timid and shy. It's like the roles were flipped. All the times you hear about the guy sneaking around with his porn and everything like that. In this case, you were that person, smut as you called it. You had these dirty little habits and stuff like that, and you were hiding them from your husband. And I thought, well, what a role reversal. And speaking of fet life, you understood that you had to establish a profile to, if you're going to be going down this road. And I'm going to read how you felt about it at first. So, quote, you said, but scrolling through the avatars on the list of attendees, an unsavory collage of inch by inch asses, tits, cunts, cocks, and combinations thereof. If unease swept over me, end quote. I thought that was so beautifully written.
You. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And it's very, very powerful that we're so transparent about going from like being uneasy about it to all immersed in it. And a big thing about, even as I myself and my partner trying to approach, the BDSM community, I think it's super important to ease into it, because in the book you talk about how it's very complex. There's a lot of layers to it. You started off as an observer, then you transitioned, into participating, as you got comfortable with it. And I think that that's an important thing to point out. So, Master Joshua, you're technically speaking professional dominant and then a non-traditional sexual behaviors consultant are the two titles I found when I was researching you.
Yeah, yeah. So essentially, I do professional domination, and NTSB counseling is BDSM without BDSM, right? Non-traditional sexual behavior. It's for those who are afraid to call it BDSM, but they're into something that isn't so intense, right? It all falls into the big umbrella that BDSM is, right? Fetish and kink, the desire for something we're afraid to speak of, right? So I make myself accessible. I make this journey accessible in both perspectives, right? For someone who isn't ready to say that they're that far into it in BDSM or leather or kink, we can call it non-traditional sexual behavior.
Hey, it is what it is. Now,
Yeah.
now I'm going to read a portion of it of, from my research of you, Master Joshua. This is not specifically from the book. So, but you stated that when you first started, you say, when I first started practicing BDSM in earnest, I assumed that what interested me in kink was, well, the kink. You say the thrill, the rush I got from dominating another person made the why seem pretty self explanatory. You go on to say, I used to play a lot of play at a lot of parties in the beginning. Before a scene, my bottom and I would talk. These talks were often uniquely candid. We were heading into a heightened situation and people wanted to let go of their masks, show me what was really going on inside. And you go on to say that by the end of it, it was people's trust you desired, their permission to connect on a deeper, truer level. Kink was just the way in. Now, I've never heard BDSM described like that before because when it's presented, a lot of times all we see is the kink. Speak to me about how it's not really about the kink so much.
So this is going to go back to my relationship with sex. I enjoy kink. I enjoy the intensity, the director energy of it, being able to, and because domination looks at 20 different ways, right? The way I enjoy it is like Rocco Siffredi if you watch porn, right? I really enjoy being a monster sexually. I also bottom, right? I'm also sex submissive too, right? I enjoy intense things. I enjoy being fisted, right? I enjoy licking shoes. So it's a very visceral, raw, primal energy exchange for me. Now, in order to access that, and this is where the title sex slave comes in. What karma's given me is freedom to be who I want to be within the four walls of our intimacy. And that looks whichever way I want it to look because she's given me the permission by calling me master and me calling her my slave. There's a freedom, there's a weightlessness of being able to express yourself sexually that you can't compare it to anything else. So knowing that that's earned through trust, right? When I connect with people, I have a level of emotion and safety I want to feel. And if you don't hit that bar, we're probably not going to be hanging out. And all that's earned through trust. And that's how I want to live my life is surrounded by people who I can not have to wear as many masks as we often have to.
Hmm.
And then I mean, once you have that freedom, that permission, dude, you can do whatever you want. Man, let's go, let's play, let's be nasty, let's do what you want. I'm game, right? Because there's no judgment.
I love
It's
how
beautiful.
I love how relationship based it is. I do because when a lot of people think about sex, so many times, our mind defaults to like maybe apps or like quick hookups and things like that. And it seems like the way that this is set up is getting away from like more superficial connections. Do you feel like, this community provides, as we might say, chosen family? Maybe somebody has been rejected by their biological family. Can people find their way into the BDSM community and find a new community that accepts them where others have rejected them?
I think that's a false hope. I think what people find in community is validation and affirmation that you're not alone. What I don't find in community more often than that is growth beyond the validation, right? Once you hit that bar of what community is, and that's set by the lowest common denominator. Now, I say that because I put a lot of time into community, and there's not a lot of return that community gives back because a lot of people in community are there to take their validation and affirmation and experiences and not really contribute. So that's a lot of energy being put out. This comes to connection, right? Now, through the years of doing professional domination, I've spoken to and hosting events, I've spoken to thousands of people. I've done thousands of sessions. I've played thousands of times. I actually complain about my joints now because my shit's hurt, man. Like my arthritis is kicking. I got tennis elbow and stuff. And people laugh, but that shit for real, right? Because I can't do it forever. What I learned in that time is how to connect with people, how to hear what people are saying and keeping my mouth shut and processing, right? Now, while we're all different, we're all very much the same, right? We fall into like 6 categories of people and we just have variables to each of us. What we're all looking for is connection and validation, right? Being seen and being heard. What we need, if we're going to find that peace, is to be put into positions where we're questioned about our beliefs, we're questioned about our journey and our directions. And that requires growth because you got to be put in uncomfortable situations. That's the type of community I'm trying to build, where we know who we are. We know who we're not, right? We're trying to unlearn what society's taught us, and we're trying to dig into finding out who we are, because no one taught us how to do any of this stuff. No one taught us how to have relationships. No one taught us how to have sex. No one taught us how to communicate, right? Simple communication. It's all boils down to communication. All I do is hold space for people and ask questions that have you reflect. And because you know all the answers, no one can teach you anything. All we can help you do is ask you the questions that you can answer for yourself, right? And transitioning from BDSM as a community more towards human responsibility, right? As a community is where we're going. And I've learned all of that through my own journey, through my relationships, through our relationships, of the importance of integrity and trying to be as judgment free as possible, trying to always do, remember, try, because we're not superhuman, trying to always just do the next right thing. Because if you do that in your relationships, you'll see all of this is achievable. You can achieve anything if you're open and honest, because what you're doing there is you're gauging your safety, you're gauging if you're being seen and heard. And if you don't have that, why would you put your guard down? Right. So you got to really reevaluate these things. I hope I didn't go off too far off topic.
And how I mean, no, how intelligent. It's all smart. It's like mindful, mindful sexual behaviors rather than just reacting to the fact that you're horny. I think it's a smart way to do, who is this person and do we have a connection? I think it's brilliant. I think it's bloody brilliant.
You can also do it on like a hookup, right? Because I've taught a few classes at Claw. Claw is Cleveland Leather Annual Weekend. They teach it. It's held in Cleveland every April, and it's in my opinion, the best large format education convention out there, especially for men, particularly gay men interested in leather culture. And I've taught about hookup culture and how it deteriorates our connection, right? Because it's more like playing jackpots. You every time you hit that hookup, you get that rush of endorphins, and oh my God, you're going to go hook up, and then you're gone and you're depleted again, and it's empty. So you go back on there and you're trying to hit that hookup again, and it's a cycle, right? And all you have to do is it's not really all you have to do, because it's not it's work. It takes work. Is you have to be okay with not being who you thought you were, and find a mentor, find someone who's at where you want to be, and develop a friendship. Friendship meaning have conversation without intention, right? Meet people without thinking, what can I get from it? And just hold space. Holding space meaning giving undivided attention and not judging. When you do that, and this can be with anyone, right? If you do that without the intention, you'll hear yourself reflected back in many different ways, in ways beyond you can even comprehend. Now, imagine doing that in an arena where you're looking to meet someone because you have similar interests, right? It doesn't just have to be at a bar or a club, but let's say you're into pottery, right? Or you're doing some Groupon eatery event, or you go do movie screenings, right? And you sit and you just have conversations about things that interest you. Hold space and listen for people, and you'll see how easy it is to hear yourself in things that matter from the other person. Not about sports, not about the movies, and not about TV shows, but about shit that matters, right? You open those doors, and while they're scary, you'll see how much return you get back on that stuff.
Hmm. You better preach. And by the way, I want to say I love the nails. You talk with your hands a lot, so I think it's beautiful that you have those all did up. So you mentioned earlier that you feel like BDSM and religion are two peas in the same pod. Break that down for me, please.
So I define spirituality as how I treat myself through my belief system. My belief system is karma, right? What I put out is what I get back. Meaning, I drink alcohol. I know I shouldn't because it's bad for my body, right? The right thing to do is to not drink alcohol, right? I smoke marijuana. It has medicinal purposes, but it still puts tar in the lungs. I know that, right? Who am I kidding? It's not the right thing to do unless there's certain circumstances, but I do it recreationally, right? There's lack of integrity in how I'm treating my body, and I'm aware of it, right? That's spirituality, how I treat myself under my belief system. Religion, as I define it, is how I treat others through my belief system, right? Now, karma, right? If I treat you like an asshole, you'll probably treat me like an asshole back, right? If I do something nice for you, maybe you'll do something nice for me without expectations, right? Intentions without expectations. Now, BDSM, and at this point, all the relationships I develop are built off of my belief system that BDSM works as a way to build deep and meaningful relationships. Open and honest communication, transparency, integrity, doing the hard stuff that isn't fun, right? Having the hard conversations that aren't fun. That's my belief system. If I approach this with integrity, it's going to come back with integrity. And if I don't feel it, it's not meant to be. But we're not dealing with that level of integrity at this point, that petty shit, right? But you have to unlearn a lot of that stuff, because what does it mean to feel safe, right? So how I associate the two is people choose what religion they put in there, right? Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, Catholicism, right? That's your belief system. Now, the difference between talking the talk and walking the walk is another big thing, right? Because you can say you're of any of these religions. I can say I practice BDSM, but it doesn't mean I practice that shit safely or correctly, right? Who's not saying I'm not using my knowledge to manipulate the situations? Wow, that kind of sounds like religion, right? Because that's it. It's all about human relations. That's all life is about, is human connections.
Hmm. What a
That was
deep,
the first time I said that shit like that. Wow, I gotta have to play that shit back.
what a
Luckily, you're on the podcast.
what a deep thinker you are, Master Joshua. Yeah, things come out of us when we need it to.
I found my connection to God through this journey. I mean, it's faith, right? The faith that if I continue doing the right thing, it will come back. The
Hmm.
faith of when I need something, it'll be provided. The faith of they won't disappoint me because I won't disappoint them. Right? It's like we've invested a lot of time and energy into building this, and it's not a house of cards. This shit's built out of steel and brick.
Oh, that's right.
I'm all hyped up, man.
Finally, somebody wants to hear about religion.
It's crazy because I would have never seen myself here. I'm one of those guys. I'm Latino, right? I grew up in New York, East Harlem. I pushed religion aside at an early age because you couldn't prove it to me. You can't prove it to me. What are you going to prove to me? Nothing. What I learned it through was consistency in the return of doing the right thing. And that was it. Now, I've touched the iron many times, right? But the point is, am I changing my behavior after I touch the iron? Right? We can't just repent on Sunday and say we're all forgiven. That shit doesn't work like that. That's a joke, right? Can I give you one philosophy, one theory, just one theory? Easter Sunday, I was coming out of the train and this guy goes, Jesus died for your sins. I'm like, Jesus did not die for my sins. I don't know Jesus. Jesus doesn't know me. When they say he died for your sins, I said, maybe he died for the sins of inaction, right? Of all the people that watched him get crucified for doing the right thing, and they failed to do the right thing. And that's why he died, for their sins of inaction. So maybe the lesson to take away from that shit is if you see something wrong, do the right thing.
The MTA says it all the time. If you see something, say something.
Sorry, I'm gonna drink my water now.
No, you are so good, man. Like I love me a good deep thinker, and whether or not I agree with everything that someone is saying, what I always agree with is the passion and the conviction, behind it. And I can tell you believe every word that's coming out of your mouth. And I know that that translates to your submissive and your slaves and everything like that. Confidence is something I love in a man. It'll make you follow him to the end of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah, you get it. You know how it works.
You know, so Karma, so So something that I read that you wrote in one of your profiles, probably on Matchmaker or maybe on one of the websites, was that this lifestyle, referring to the BDSM lifestyle, is one of the most sensationalized and least understood factions of the LGBTQIA2S plus community. I
Right.
wanted to dwell on this for a moment because I know when a lot of people think BDSM, they don't necessarily place that in the plus of the LGBTQIA.
Right.
So, and I don't, to my knowledge, I mean, are most people who practice BDSM in our community? Is it sometimes separate? Is it always together? Help me understand.
I'm gonna give you my this is Master Joshua's question, but that's his to
No, no,
answer.
go ahead.
But I'm gonna give you my outlook. BDSM was something I was interested in, but once I began exploring it and living it as as a submissive, as a slave, it's not a well, I this is just how I enjoy fucking. It's not just this is it's an inherent part. It's a identity. It's a sexual identity and it's a personal identity and it's a setup of how I would like to interact with people on it has parts of it that are integral to who I am. It should not be viewed as a I say it's as much of an identity as transgender is, or gay is, or lesbian is. It is not a game. It's a peoplehood in a way. And for me, and it has very concrete aspects, right? Because, for example, if I try to advertise my book on Amazon so people could see it. So it would get some, just because I exist and I want people to know about the book I wrote, obviously. So if I want to advertise on Amazon, I can't because the word BDSM is not, they do not advertise anything that has BDSM in the title because BDSM is a perversion, a sexual thing, and they don't run with that, right? But transgender is okay. Transgender has its own category and is promoted as such. And in a way, it comes to I have a truth about myself that I cannot speak because BDSM is not acceptable as other sexual identities are. Right? I can't be who I am openly. I have to I can't talk about this almost anywhere, right? I'm poly, right? I have a husband and a master and I can't talk about that anywhere. And I am kinky, right? I like sex to involve certain things that other people do not like and I can't talk about that. And both of these things are huge parts of who I am and what I do with my life, but I don't have any permission to approach it as such. However, there is a community and there are people who do this as a lifestyle and as an expression of self, an expression of identity. So in my eyes, it is just a matter of time until BDSM or the leather community or however it ends up calling itself or unifying itself will become part of that umbrella of the LGBTQA. And it will be the plus, right? Somewhere in that plus is our place in humanity. And that's why I identified the book as such, because it really is, if you look at the larger picture of things, at history, at what's happening, that's the purpose of my book, to show people that this is an identity and a legit one and it belongs into a group of people and this is the group it belongs to.
Yeah, that and Master Joshua, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, because I have the like the technical stuff. So while and it's evolved a lot over the last X amount of years, it was hugely segregated between gay, pansexual, and pansexual is more heteronormative, and the queer community. You had smaller subsets within those. With the times, everyone's evolved. Mostly everyone's evolved to where everyone's promoting inclusivity, but the vibe still changes with every event that you go to. The What we're trying to do within that event space and what people come to us for is a level of equality where people are just, again, people are just people. We have the name of the intensive that we host is called People Before Kink. And it's like, it's all about getting to know the person next to you. Because I have a personal agenda around BDSM and getting it to fall under the civil rights protection, right? To be identified as an identity, because we're born this way, right? We have these desires, these relationship developments. Like, I identify as a leather sexual because I need to get to know you. And once I get to know you, I'll determine if I like you or not. It has nothing to do with what's between your legs. Nothing to do with what's between your legs. Nothing to do with how you identify. I don't care anything else other than, are you a good person? And if I can vibe with you, I probably want to fuck. Right? But it's like, don't put on a mask. Don't lie to me. Right? I have no agenda with. I have. I just want to. I just want to witness your existence. Tell me about yourself. And just on that alone will tell me which way we're gonna go, right? And I found that shit out in 2019 at Palm Springs Pride March. I was standing in the back of the chute. Did I tell you the story?
Mm-mm.
And everyone's waving their flags, and I'm tight, right? Because my relationship with my orientation has always been up in the air. I don't identify as straight. I don't identify as gay. I fell somewhere in bi pansexual, like but it always fell short. And everyone's waving their flags, and I'm like, but does the genitalia really fucking determine? Does this really determine? Like, what determines for me? And I said, well, I've been doing this process for years now, and this is what matters to me. It determines whether I want to hook up with you or not. Because I've met enough people where once they open their mouth, I was like, that's a done deal. I just spent all this time meeting them, talking to them, and then I then fucking box of rocks. Like, I have no interest in it. So I changed the way I approached to this lifestyle. And this is how we develop relationships. And once you have the taste for being seen and heard, you're not going to settle for nothing else. If you do if you're doing yourself harm, right? By not doing just being seen and heard, right? And learning the value of the roles that we play. So it's like, I believe it's that ingrained into us. It's about, we realize that it's about the connection we're making, that is our lifestyle.
I look forward to your book coming out, Master Joshua. It becomes the
I'll
way
have fun again. Fun.
Yeah, no, I'm working on it because something that just came to mind. I was visiting a mistress friend of mine out in Pennsylvania, and she's been doing it as long as I have, and it was such an amazing connection to meet someone who is on the same page of, because once you've been doing this shit for so long, you've been wearing your mask for too long, your teacher hat, and we've gotten to the point where we've taken it off, and it's like we need to continue our own personal journeys. Domination aside, what does that mean? Now, we got to share that space and vulnerability with each other. It was incredible. We also got to share perspectives of what are we doing with this knowledge. And what I walked away with is creating a power exchange academy where, just like our People Before Kink intensives and our other personal development intensives, the idea behind this and all of it is, how do we help you find your version of what you're looking for? How do we help you tap into your dominance? How do we help you tap into your submission? And what does it look like? And what does structure look like? And all that's going to be built and taught off of philosophy, safety, and techniques. Right now, the book is going to come out based off of that too, because there's a lot to say about this. That I believe BDSM could be a form of therapy. Now, not only therapeutic, as in the spanking and the relief that a person can get, but therapy with the understanding that the professional dominant understands the responsibility of the space that you hold. The person is coming into you, you're giving them, again, the undivided attention and you're judgment free. And you're reflecting back to them that they're okay and that they're not broken. We also have the ability to connect with them on the level of giving our own examples and life experiences that a lot of mental health professionals can't. They have to keep that wall up. So imagine you're sitting with someone who you just told your deepest, darkest secrets, and they didn't even bat an eye. And then they said, you know what? I understand. I had an experience like that one time with boom. And then they just lay it out. And you're like, holy fuck, I'm not broken. I'm not wrong. What they've told me for the last 20 years was a lie.
Yeah.
Right now, that I'm talking about that level of therapy and healing. And then you walk into the therapeutic stuff. But we as the professionals have to understand the role that we play in all of it. You can't just say, listen, this is what I'm doing. And the only way you can do that is by doing the fucking work yourself. You have to go and you have to walk and you have to open the closets and you have to look in, and you have to cry and you have to have imposter syndrome every other month, right? You got to do all the ugly shit so that you can say the point of suffering is on the other side of all that suffering, you can say, you know what? I see you coming. Keep coming because you can survive. I did it. Just keep going, right? You can provide that space, dude. That's all we're doing. That's all we're doing. So that's why I think it's a form of therapy.
Well, after that, after that sermon right there, I think it's about time I take off my top for you.
I like it. I like it.
So
Now we're all at home.
Can I do mine? Can I take off my shirt?
whatever it is you want to do. So,
Sorry, I'm keeping mine on.
so this is the introductory piece of leather one of the two me and my boyfriend got when we started to experiment. And so I wanted to read a couple of chapter titles during this part because I thought that they were so fun. And you have masochism, knives, rope, negotiation, the dungeon. You know, and think,
That was my life at the time. That is my life. That is my life at the time now.
and so I wanted to just read a few definitions. So you were talking about how like your bottom and everything like that. And I love your tattoos and the harness and everything, all very thoughtful and thought out. It was very intriguing to me to find some of the, like top and bottom and everything like that, those terms, in the BDSM community. Look, as far as I'm concerned, everyone's welcome. BDSM, come on and play with us too. As you mentioned in the book, Karma, you mentioned, it's like coming out of the closet, even, like for you. And I was like, okay, I don't know that I've ever, could step that deep into the BDSM world to realize that people who really like, that sort of lifestyle have all these barriers too and all this judgment. And so as far as I'm concerned, come on and play with us. I'm so happy that you go to Pride, Master Joshua and everything like that. I think it's so inclusive. And I feel like your book, Karma, is really, really, for people who are in that situation where you were, in a relationship, feeling like something's missing, they don't know what, and, how the hell are you going to tell your husband? We're going to talk about that after I go over these definitions here. So I just want to read them. So top, you say in the context of BDSM, a top is a term given to the individual who assumes the controlling or dominant role over a submissive participant, or bottom. I get the sense that it doesn't matter if it's male, female, other. It's just like whoever. And I think that that's more comprehensive than how it is, like in the gay community. Scene, the definition of scene is a BDSM scene is a pre-planned space where BDSM activities take place. It is also it also includes the participation of BDSM related activities. Like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of work and planning that goes into this sort of thing. Now, what interested me the most, though, and what I want y'all to talk about is the aftercare. Now, this is particularly interesting to me. It says in BDSM, aftercare is the period of time after a scene in which partners attend to one another's physical, emotional, and psychological needs. Typically, the dominant partner in the scene will be the one caring for the submissive partner or partners. BDSM scenes are often very intense and can often be emotionally and psychologically draining. Physical injuries are also not uncommon during these scenes. Tell me about this aftercare and why it's needed, honey.
Well, first, we should source them. This came from kinkly.com. The definitions are from kinkly.com. And I was learning them as I was going. So for me, how to, there was a discussion, how should I put them? Should it be in glossary? Should it be at the end of the book? But I put them as I learned them, right? I would go after each time I met Joshua, I'm online, I'm doing my research. I'm like, what the fuck happened to me right now? Let me see. And that's how all these things were pulled. Now, of course, he is the professional, so he is the one who should be talking about what these things are and how you properly employ them. But in the place in the book that you came about, the place where aftercare was mentioned, it was in the context of a party, right? Master Joshua was playing with another man, and and it was a very intense scene. It involved breath play, and the person at the other end of it, he was barely standing when we were done. He was not standing when we were done. He was when they were done. Master Joshua took him off the restraints, and the person just kind of collapsed into his arms. And Master Joshua, you don't see it here, but he has a pretty smallish frame, and the person was much bigger than him. And when that person fell into his arms, they both had to sit down because he couldn't hold him. And what happened was Master Joshua kind of propped him up in his arms and put his held his head in his lap and kind of just caressed his head and just held his hands and caressed him, and it was very tender and very peaceful, and not at all something that I ever thought of in the context of BDSM. And I think that while the whole party, the whole thing was exciting and mesmerizing, I think that was the moment where I kind of like fell in love, both with the lifestyle and probably with Joshua, because it was so just tender and naked. Like it had a gravity to it of like holding a baby, or a tenderness to just, there was so much warmth and empathy in it that it felt like the height of what a human relationship could be, right? And there was such a sweetness to it, right? The other person has surrendered, the conqueror has taken what he it wasn't clear who was taken and who was given anymore, but there was just a comfort there. He was comforting him. And I was like, how does that work? That person just beat the other person till he was senseless. And now he's holding him and he's comforting him like that big man is like a child, like a baby. And it was incredibly sweet. And later I researched it and came up with, what is that? Why did that happen? What is that about? And so I came across aftercare, and I'm like, oh, there's a term for it. Okay, great. And that's the term I included in my book. But really, it's seeing it, and that's what got me hooked, I would say, more than all the rest, because it's so beautiful.
Oh, interesting. So since we're wearing these harnesses, what is it, how are these used in the, in the community, and, why is the leather such a draw? But I see these harnesses everywhere at all the gay bars, everywhere I go. What's the big deal with the harnesses? People want to know.
I think now it's just a symbol, right? I think it's a fashion statement. It's mainstream, which is cool. I'm thankful for it because it allows it to be more okay to go out in public like it. Granted, I have a lot more leather than a piece or two, but being able to normalize BDSM, like 50 Shades, good, bad, or different, it put BDSM into the spotlight.
Yes.
As time has progressed and we have other artists who have come forward with harnesses and other leather outfits. I mean, there's designers out there that rock leather 24/7. I think it gets lost in the fashion that sometimes you can use these to fuck. right? And use those. You see the bar across your chest? You have a similar one on the back,
Yeah.
right? And they're made out of leather because leather is very durable, right? So imagine being on all fours and using the harness as straps, as handles, right?
Okay.
You can also lead you can also lead around on the leash,
Kind of like a reins, yeah,
right?
I like
on the
ring.
horse.
Not
And yeah, you're not going anywhere because those are built to hold.
yes.
I mean, they look cool too, right? But like the one I have it like here in the back, like just shot. It it's it's meant to it's meant to hold, to be sturdy.
That was the first time I actually got to grab the strap, and
I'm so
I'm like,
happy.
"Oh, that's how it
Happy I was a part of your first time experience.
is."
Look at that, 4 years later,
Like,
5 years later, it's
release
still
the
happening.
clothes.
Yeah, with a strap on.
So then the last thing I want to talk about, and thank you all so much for your time today. I appreciate it immensely. Time is one resource that we cannot get back or create anymore. So I appreciate it when people sit down to give of their time to me. It means everything. And I humbly am thankful for it and I humbly accept it. So in that last chapter in the book, you were really, really giving a lot of like heavy emotion. You were talking about how the burden of this, I guess you could say, like, maybe the secret life or the life you wanted to live, was getting to you. You were like so unhappy. And then you got an X-Acto knife and then you begin to cut yourself and you show these cut wounds to Master Joshua. And without really saying much, you know, he did, he affirmed that he was going to take on this problem for you, and then his solution was to make you his submissive and to be a slave, and then for him to become your master. In the book, you talk about how you were so like relieved that you got down and kissed his feet in gratitude. So, because I feel like this book is really, really written for people in like similar situations, whether they may find themselves in those situations today or in the future. I really want you to talk about just how unhappy you were that it brought you to the point of self mutilation and how what he offered you seemed to be like instant relief for you.
Well, I was cheating on my husband, and I was living a lie, and I Joshua and I were too deeply involved for me to walk away from it. Walking away from it was just it felt too much like walking away from my own story, right? I was invested in it. I wanted it. I did not want to walk away from it. And every time I walked away from it, it just resulted in me coming back because this was this is my story. This is what I'm going through. It's not a At some point, I stopped viewing it as a mistake and started viewing it as my own personal odyssey. I cannot walk away. It's just like a hero walking away from his movie. There's always a point where he wants to, there's always a point where he tries to, but he's in the movie, so he stays and he sees the adventure through. So I couldn't walk away from that, but I also did not have the courage to step up to my husband and tell him this is what I'm going to because I came from that. I didn't know much about this world going in. And to me, the fact that Joshua has other partners, other women, it meant that he's not all in there for me, right? He has other women. I'm probably not that important. So how can I risk my whole family life? That there was always that thought of like, if I fail and my husband leaves me, and like if I tell him the truth and it ends up in a divorce,
Mm,
how am I gonna will Joshua be there for me? Will there be anything left? Like, will Joshua be there for me, you know, tomorrow. Like, because I don't, it wasn't really clear how much, how deep his commitment was, because coming from a monogamous world, how do you judge commitment? You judge it by, you're my only one, right? That's not true in this case. You judge it by, I love you more than anybody. It's not true in this case. You judge it by, I'll give you all my time. I'll give you. It just doesn't work that way when you're in other kinds of partnerships, and that made me very wary of him. Plus, again, he was going through a lot of difficult. His world was forming at that time. He was going through a lot of difficult transitions. I saw a lot of aspects of him that are now, he now outgrew them, but he was finding his way back then, and I was like, I don't know if I can trust him to catch me when I fall, because if I have to lose my children in my home, it'll be a really heavy fall. So I wasn't. So I didn't dare tell my husband. My husband was largely looking the other way at most things. There were a lot of lies that I didn't admit to, but there were a lot of questions he didn't ask, and I kind of lived in that space. But waking every morning to a lie, it will kill you.
Mm.
It will kill you. It was killing me, it was just, there's nothing really, it's so corrupting that there's really nothing to do but to cut yourself, because just every day waking up and just deepening the groove of I'm going, no, I'm doing something deeply wrong to everybody. It's it's not a way to live. So it came to a point, and when I said to Joshua, I, I need help. I need help. I'm at ends with. I don't. One day I'm gonna cut too deep. So he said, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You can be my submissive. I'll give you that collar. That was the commitment that when he said, you will be my submissive, you're gonna be my responsibility. I knew that whatever, if I do what he says, it's gonna be all right.
Can
Right.
I add to that real quick?
Yeah.
Now, for a good chunk of the relationship in the beginning, I thought it was adversarial because she was a reporter, right? And I had these accusations over my head, and I felt everyone was out to get me. Now, I played the safety of, I'm going to show you exactly who I am, and I hope for the best, right? And time moved forward. Now, when it came to the collar, what I need from you, if you're going to be my submissive, is I need you to obey me, right? Trust me that if I give you a direction, it's in your best interest, right? I'm not going to make you do shit that I wouldn't do myself. I'm not going to put you against anything morally, right? If you have conflict morally, let me know and we will work on it. We'll talk through it and figure out what the wall is so that I can understand what these boundaries are. I will never steer you wrong because trust is the most important thing to me. That connection, right? And she was my safe space for so long, and to watch someone you love because of the safety she provided, watch her deteriorate. She wouldn't follow my suggestions, and it was like I can't keep with the frustrations of giving you guidance. I can't be that person of giving you guidance and bring this frustration onto my life if you're not going to follow what I say. So if you want to be recognized, if you want this connection to be recognized, I need you to tell your husband everything. I need you to trust me and not doubt my word. If I say, Karma, jump, you say, how high? Because I'm not going to put you in a bad position. I will always do what's in your best interest. And that's the value of the collar. That's the value of submission and dominance, right? Because I don't want dominate. I didn't want power exchange. Why would I want to be more responsible? I'm trying to unfuck myself, right? Life just hit me, right? I realized people my experience was my 20s, I was really still a teenager. My early 30s, I realized that no one knew what the fuck was going on and that everyone's winging it. And then I'm trying to get my feet under me, right? And that doesn't happen once you figure that shit out. That's when you're like, oh my God, who am I? And you start working on that. And then you have these dissolution of dynamics. Your world is falling apart around you. You meet someone who's holding space, like it's all this stuff in momentum, right? And no one really thinks of it as a singular event, right? Just as we're talking about it, that's a tsunami of shit happening, one life milestone after the next.
Yeah, it was a really, really turbulent period for both of us. We got just caught in each other's turbulences. But I guess for me it was sort of like sticking a stick in the ground and saying like this is what I'm holding on to, right? This is of all the flying around pieces of all the my work, my husband, my family, the lies, the parties. I was getting pretty heavy with BDSM as sort of a both an addiction and a distraction, and like there was a lot, just a lot of stuff flying up in the air. So having this to say, I am his submissive and I do what I say and I don't question. And it was a huge relief because it takes the navigation of this situation off my shoulders. I don't have to question what's right or what's wrong, not morally. Morally, I know, and if I have any problems that I come. But it's sort of like, when you're in a really difficult situation where your own well-being is in danger, you can't really see well. Yeah, and you question yourself and I was already like burdened by guilt and self-deceit and lies. And I was like, I questioned myself to the point that I was, on the path of self-destruction. So to somebody who is questioning himself and really not liking himself, he can't make good decisions because there's no working relationship between you and you at that point. So handing over the reins and saying, this is who I am. I am a submissive because I love him. That's the one thing I don't question. I love him. I'm crazy about him. And I want to follow what he tells me because he said, you're mine. And the moment he says you're mine, that gives me a place in the world. And I know who I was doubting myself. I didn't know who I am, but I had full confidence in him. And if I'm his, I'm going to be his the best his I can be. Like for him, I'd be a good person. I wasn't being a good person for me, but for him, I'd be a good person. Like, and I do what he tells me because I'm proud of this. Like, I wasn't being a good wife, but I'm gonna be a damn good submissive, like the best I can be. So when he told me, he came up with a plan, right? He was like, "What do you need to fix in your home in order to feel why aren't you telling your husband, 'I'm scared'? Why are you scared? Because everything is in such a shitty shape right now that I can't bear the idea of stepping up to the plate. So what do you need to fix for it not to be in a shitty space? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then broke it down to pieces, did it, got to that point. Then we started talking about how do you come up to a person and say something like that? Pretend I'm him. Talk to me like I'm him. Let's have that conversation. And we had it over and over again until I could, until I didn't come to the door and then ran away. There were so many times I tried to talk about it and couldn't until it was done. And once that was done, once that barrier was crossed, it was like, moving from living in a parallel reality and what reality should have been merged. Right now, I'm like, oh my God, this is real now. This is a real, he knows, everybody knows. And this has become not some kind of shameful secret affair, but a reality in all our world. And once that happened, it wasn't too hard to do it again, right? It wasn't too hard to say, for him to tell me, now this is what you need to do to step over this gap. What's stopping you now? Tell me. And he would ask, and I would tell him. And he's like, okay, so what do you need to do to get over it? And I would tell him. And then he was like, okay, do it. And that just kept happening again and again and again and again till we're at a point where right now I'd say I'm at a point where I'm like, I do it with my, he's still there for me, but I do it for myself.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so like I'm so glad that you're happy now. I get a good happiness vibe off of you. Um,
You.
So, Master Joshua, how many slaves do you have?
So now I'm not a collector. I swear to God, I'm not a collector. But I have two slaves. I have slave Karma and I have slave Mary. I have my Kajira Evie. I have my baby girl Shweta, and I have my mama bear cat. They're all my partners in varying degrees, and we all have different levels of investment into our own journeys and relationships and collectively.
Okay, and then Karma, the collar, do you wear that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or are you allowed off at times? Okay.
Only when I'm with him. The rest of the time is a wedding ring because out of respect, because like you, like you could know from the book, my husband didn't choose this lifestyle. He accepted it because he wants me in his life and he wants to keep his family together. But when I'm with my husband, he is the priority, right? And I do my best to, and this is with Master Joshua's agreement as well. As in, when I'm with my family is the priority. So no collar except this is still, I'm still wearing this mask, right? This is still something of a secret identity.
The intention behind our relationship is to make her the best person that she can be, the best wife, the best mother, the best human. We support each other in our goals. With the time that she held for me, the space that she held for me over that period of time, she she's one of the very few people that know me best inside and out. And like she's more than like sex slave, the role sex slave is to honor the freedom that she gives me intimately and the trust that comes with it. Because it's not just for fun. It's a lot of fun, but we've put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to this point where the title slave is not a submissive. It's not a weak. It's not a weakness, right? It's submission out of trust. It's slaveship out of investment.
Okay. I feel you on that. So you mentioned 50 Shades of Grey earlier, and I remember from watching that he didn't, I think his name was Christian Grey, if I recall
Yeah,
correctly.
Christian.
Christian Grey, he didn't allow Anastasia to use drugs. So was that kind of like just his thing, or is that kind of common in the community where drugs are not mixed with BDSM?
So everyone has their own choice around that. Everyone has their own practices. The idea behind it, the concept, and understandably so, is once you are out of functioning mind, right? Once you're inebriated in any degree, you can't give consent, right? So to be intoxicated or to have any altered state of mind, you can't give consent. Now, some people negotiate upfront and then introduce the chemical to the play. At the end of the day, it all boils down to personal responsibility, right? Because you can say whatever you want. People are going to do what they're going to do. Be mindful of the numbing intoxicants, medications, particularly pain meds. Do not do BDSM and take pain meds. Don't do them like be responsible, people. A lot of people do dumb shit. If you can't give consent, if you can't be mindful and present in your body, it's most likely a bad choice, right? Some people need a couple drinks. Some people like to smoke. I know there's psychedelics introduced. There's different levels of narcotics introduced. People do it. it all boils down to personal responsibility and personal choice.
It was not a no-no for me. It's not there's no, you can't do practically anything.
Yeah. What we
Mhm.
what we share with each other is the way our relationship works is yes until no. Like I have permission to do what I would like when I would like it, unless it's a no, right? And I'm okay with that. Yes, tell me no, because if there's something wrong, I need to know.
Right. And it happened, what was it, 2 days ago, when I said no, and then he stopped, and I was like, "Well, that was a no, but not a red. You don't have to listen."
Yeah, yeah, because we have safe words too, but it's like no, no, but take me, right? Like that kind of yeah.
I was like, "Nick, no, no," and he stopped, and I was like, "Well, okay,
I
I'm
know that safe
listening
word.
now. I'm gonna."
I love how childlike and playful y'all are with each other. So, so if someone's in New York and they have curiosity about this sort of thing, is there anywhere you might direct them to go check out, or do they need to go on FetLife first, or what do you recommend?
What I would suggest is you can hit up any of our websites, masterjoshua.com, kinkcollective.net. That's KINK collective.net, DCE.org. That's not kink related, but that's personal development related. Also, anywhere on social media under Master Joshua NYC or Kink Collective there as well. We're more than happy to field any questions you may have because there's 4 weeks per month, almost five, sometimes five, and there's always something going on. So reach out to us, and I'm more than happy to direct you in whichever way would be best suited.
Okay, and with that, I'll let the two of you have the last word. Whatever it is you'd like to say to the world, just go on ahead and say it.
Surviving Master Joshua, the book is on Google. Surviving Master Joshua, the BDSM Memoir of an Unfaithful Wife by Karma Said. And just Google it. Wherever you want to get it from, it'll show up on Google. You can always get it directly from Amazon, but get it through Google first. And there's survivingmasterjoshua.com. And if you are an author and you write nonfiction BDSM and erotica, then I would like to publish you or help you get published in one way or another. And that's carnalculturepublishing.com. You can contact me through there.
Any words of wisdom for the listeners?
If there's ever a conflict between what you want and who you are and the rules of the world, the way to get there is just don't lie. Do what you want to do, but don't lie. And if you did lie, find your way out of it, because I'd say lying was my greatest enemy.
Mm. Say yes more as long as it doesn't conflict with you morally, and always do the next right thing. Right?
Yeah, like in Frozen too.
Just like those two. Also, give yourself permission to explore your body. It took me almost 4 decades to say, Joshua, how can you allow someone to penetrate you if you don't even know how to do it yourself? Right? Give yourself permission to explore your body in whichever way you want. It's your meat vessel, right? For your soul. You're okay, right? It doesn't mean anything because you want to be with yourself. Make love to yourself. Be with yourself. All right, that's it. I'm done.
As Mama RuPaul would say, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell you gonna love anybody else? Can I get it? Up in here. Thank you all so much for coming on. Y'all, all of those links they mentioned, I'm gonna put in the show notes, plus a couple of others that'll be there for easy reference. If you're driving your car somewhere, you don't have to scribble it all down. I'm gonna put it in the show note. And with that, we will see you all next time. Have a fantastic fucking day, and just remember that everything is gonna be all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com. or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Feel free to reach out to me directly at Devannon, sexdrugsandjesus.com, and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devannon, and it's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.